Hey guys, Britt here. Welcome to End Times Bible Prophecy. Make sure to hit the subscribe, like, and share buttons. Well, are you prepared for what may come, what we may have to endure if certain events take place in the world before the rapture occurs, while we're still here on earth? Jesus told us that there will be many trials and tribulations here on this earth, but take heart because he has overcome the world. So we have no guarantee that we won't suffer here in this world. In fact, just the opposite. So I've had a lot of questions come in from people asking about what if central bank digital currency is implemented before the rapture while we're still here on earth? What happens if any number of crises take place? What if there's a cyber attack or war takes place and you lose local infrastructure, utilities, your electricity, your natural gas, all your energy and water goes away? What do? How do you deal with those sorts of things? So we're going to talk about those today and things you should be doing to prepare, because while our trust should be in the Lord also gives us wisdom to prepare to protect ourselves, our family, our neighbors, the people around us. So we should use the wisdom he's given us to prepare ahead of time as much as we can. There's only so much you can do. And then from there, you trust the Lord. Of course, you trust in the Lord the whole way, but you trust in him to give you the wisdom to prepare accordingly ahead of time. So I'm going to talk about several things that we should be doing, each of us should be doing, to make sure that we're resilient in these times, because we live in very unique times, and when you look at past generations, we aren't as resilient as our grandparents and great-grandparents were. And there's things we can do to fix that, to strengthen ourselves. So we're going to talk about those things today. I've had a couple of videos in the past, because people ask about this all the time, where I address these issues. I'm going to link to those in the description and pin them at the comments if you want to go back and watch those. Maybe you've already seen them. I intentionally didn't go back and watch those to see if, hey, I'll give what advice I think is best right now, and hopefully it aligns with what I said before. But if there may be things that I left out then that I address now, or vice versa. But hopefully there's going to be certain themes that run through, and if you see those themes running through, then that means, hey, it's important, and this is an area we should focus on. So what are the top things you can do to prepare for any number of these things happening? So there's several things like central bank digital currency. It may apply, some of these things may apply only to that, or only to a grid down scenario. But a lot of this will apply no matter what the scenario is. It's just a good idea to be doing these things. So number one, what should you be doing? Number one, you need to be prepared. And this is important regardless of whether there's ever a crisis or not. This is about life and death. Number one, you need to be prepared spiritually. You need to make sure that you have a personal relationship with Jesus Christ. You know, God, the good news that we have in this world is that while we were still sinners, Jesus came to this earth and he died on the cross. He spilled his blood for our sins, for us, while we were still sinners. So we're all sinners, right? We were born into sin. We all fall short of God's mark of perfection that he requires. So we all fall short of that standard. Yet Jesus came and he died on the cross, spilled his blood for us so that we could have forgiveness of sins and be reconciled with God and live with him in heaven. So to do that, you need to invite Jesus into your heart. You need to repent of your sins. You need to turn from them. You need to recognize this is not how God wants me to live. I need to turn from that, and I need to embrace the cross of Christ and realize that sacrifice is what reconciles me with God, not my good deeds, not anything I've done or haven't done, but it is Jesus alone is the path to salvation. No one gets to the Father except through him. He is the way, the truth, and the life. So if you know that, that is the most important thing you can do to prepare for your life, but to prepare for a crisis, because in a crisis time, you're going to need to know who you are, what your purpose is, and where you're going. You need to know you're a child of God, your purpose is to glorify Him, and you are going to heaven regardless of what happens between the present day and when you end up there. So it's very important that you are immersed in the Word of God, you understand it, you know it, you write it upon your heart. It's important in a crisis, you have a physical copy of the Bible, right? I know a lot of people who have the Bible on their phone, on their tablet. That's great. Not saying that's bad, but make sure that you have a physical copy available, because what happens if those devices no longer work in a crisis and you don't have access to that Bible that you need? So we know why this is important. It has eternal consequences, but even here in the short term in a crisis, history shows that people who know who they are and have a purpose and have hope for the future are better able to endure a crisis situation. They're able to get through that more easily, more often than people who do not know that and don't have a purpose in life, don't know who they are, don't know where they're going, they have no hope. So having hope is very important. Number 2, you need to be emotionally and mentally prepared. So that goes hand in hand with knowing Christ, knowing who you are, what your purpose is, where you're going. But you need to think through all these scenarios we talked about. So what if central bank digital currency is implemented? You need to start thinking, well, what am I going to do? What are the actions I'm going to take? You need to think about these things now and make a plan of action so that you're not caught off guard, because people who have a plan and the ability to execute it, they have less stress, less anxiety, and they're better able to navigate a crisis because they've already made those plans. It's not a surprise, and they're able to navigate that. So think of all the things that could go wrong. Most of those things, thankfully, will never happen. But you'll be able to sleep better at night knowing you have a plan. It may not be a perfect plan, but at least it's a plan and you would know what to do. Having plans is very important. So think through all the various scenarios and what would you do. Number 3, you need to prepare yourself socially. You need to make sure that you are surrounded by a community of like-minded people you can count on. Do you know your neighbors? Unfortunately, in this day and age, so many people just do not even know their neighbors. If you don't know your neighbors, it's important to just know your neighbors anyway. But in a crisis, those are the people you're all going to be relying on each other. So you need to know your neighbors, know your coworkers, because you don't know where you're going to be when a crisis occurs. I don't know about you, but our family, we're a 25, 30-minute drive away from our church. So if we're saying, well, my church family is who I'm going to rely on, well, what if we can't drive anywhere for whatever reason? There's no gasoline, or there's just some scenario where we can't drive anywhere. Well, we better know our neighbors. We better know the people around us, and we do. So that is very important. You need to have a sense of community. God didn't intend for us to live life alone, and especially when it comes to a crisis situation, you're far stronger together than one person is by themselves. So community, prepare yourself spiritually, emotionally, mentally, socially. You need to strengthen yourselves in all those ways. And I know a lot of you are thinking, no, Britt, I want to know, what do I need to go out and buy? What are the items I need to get? We're going to talk about some of those things, but those go last, because, guys, you can lose an item. They can go away for various reasons. You can stockpile a bunch of items, and then your house burns down, or it has a flood, or thieves come and steal it. So you need to focus on strengthening the things that, don't cost a lot of money, because most people don't have a lot of money to go out and buy things. But number 2, those are things you can't steal. No one can steal your relationship with Jesus Christ. No one can steal your emotional and mental toughness. No one can steal your social bonds and relationships if you built strong ones. So those are the most important things that you can do to prepare for any sort of crisis scenario. Number 4, knowledge and skills. The same thing. If you've got knowledge and skills, you're not going to misplace those, lose those, have them stolen. You'll always have those. So think about all of these scenarios. In a central bank digital currency scenario, if there's, certain things that have been done because you've been singled out for whatever reason as an enemy of society, so you can't use your central bank digital currency to buy this, that, or the other. Well, you need to be able to barter and trade with other people in order to get the things that you need. Well, one way that you can do that is by having skills and knowledge that you can share with other people. And so what are some of the skills and knowledge you can learn? What are some of the skills and knowledge you could have in a crisis where the grid goes down and you're in your neighborhood and everybody's trying to figure out how to get through the day without power, without water? Well, do you know self-defense? Whether armed or unarmed, do you know self-defense techniques? Because you need to protect yourself, your family, your neighbors. Do you know how to hunt, how to fish? Do you know how to sew and knit? Do you know how to store food, grow food? Do you know how to give medical treatments to people? So maybe you have medical knowledge and skills. If someone gets hurt, you can attend to them. So all of these things are skills, and there's so more. I mean, we could go on all day talking about different skills you could learn. These are good skills to know, even if nothing ever happens. There's no crisis ever in your life. But they're definitely great skills to have in a crisis like some of the ones we're talking about. So I'll give you an example right here of something I've been doing. So what I have right here, you can see I've got this old egg carton, and I planted 12 seeds in here, and 3 of them have sprouted. Those are bell peppers. Now, these are bell peppers from last year. So last year I grew the bell peppers, and I made sure I understood the soil composition of what they needed, what amount of sunlight they needed, what time of year, what the temperatures were that they did well in, what are some predators, what are some diseases that could affect these bell peppers. So I grew these bell peppers, and I tried to fertilize them with things that were readily available. So like, let's say Home Depot is shut down. There's no fertilizer at Home Depot. There's nothing at Home Depot, and you need to grow your own food. Do you know how to do that? Do you have the soil prepared to do that? Do you have the knowledge of what sort of food that plant needs and how you can create it yourself from things that are nearby? And so then how do you know how to take the seeds from that? So those seeds that I just showed you, the little seedlings that sprouted up, those are from seeds from those bell peppers last year that I dried and stored, and now I've replanted. So as you see, 3 of the 12 have come up. That's fine. Those 3 plants will produce quite a number of bell peppers. Now, it's not going to be enough to feed our family by any means. I'm not trying to say that. But what I'm saying is, by learning these skills now, learning how to grow these things, I can grow a few bell pepper plants, but if I ever need to scale that up from 3 or 4 plants to 300 or 400 plants, I have the knowledge to do that. 97% of the work has been done. I've got the seeds, I've got the soil, I've got the knowledge, and so I'm going to have a much better outcome than if I started from scratch and we said, we have to grow our food now. What are we going to do? So you learn these skills now, because in a crisis situation, just like we said before, you need to make a plan now as to what actions you're going to take. Well, you need to, part of that is acquiring the skills that may be part of that plan. So if you need to grow your own food in the future, you better have somewhat of an understanding of how to do that, right? You don't want to have to be able to do it when you're trying to figure it out, because it's hard to do, guys. It is hard to do. It's not as easy as, oh, you throw a seed in the dirt, pour some water on it, everything's wonderful. There's a lot of work involved, a lot of constant attention involved. There's all sorts of things that can go wrong. Learn those things now. Make those mistakes now when it doesn't matter, so that if and when it ever does matter, things work out better. You have a better outcome. So, learn skills. Now we get to the part probably most of you are talking about, which is supplies and materials, right? What do I need to acquire to prepare? And again, I want to reiterate, these things are important. It's wise to acquire these things, no doubt about it. But they are not as important as the things I've talked about so far. Because again, you can stockpile 10 years worth of supplies and say, I'm ready for a 10-year crisis. What if the crisis lasts 11 years? Right? You're going to run out of supplies. What happens, again, if there's a flood? You've got all these supplies in your house and there's a flood or a fire or a break-in. Any number of things could go wrong and you lose those supplies. And then what do you have? But again, you can't lose your relationship with Jesus Christ. You can't lose your emotional and mental strength if you've prepared properly. I mean, you could, I guess, lose those things in the worst of circumstances. But you're going to be better off if you prepare emotionally and mentally for a crisis. You're not going to have your skills and knowledge stolen. You're not going to have these things happen. So, all that said, what are some of the things that you need? Well, you need access to water. So do you have a water filter? We have a Berkey water filter. It's packed up in a box right now, so I don't want to, for the move, so I'm not going to bring that out and show it, but you can look that up, see what that is. If you've got a Berkey water filter, you can take pond water, pool water. You can take pretty much any water source, run it through that, and have water that you're able to drink. Do you have a nearby water source? Make sure that you have that water source. Do you have something to run through that filter? Ideally, you might have a well with a hand pump, or you're next to a stream, some pristine mountain stream that you can drink from. All those things would be ideal, but if you don't, you just need to make sure you have some source of water. You don't want to be in the middle of the desert with no water if a crisis takes place. So next, food. So we talked about, what if you have to grow food? Well, okay, acquire those skills. Even if you're able to grow food, you don't plant a seed and then have a bunch of food the next day, right? Doesn't work that way. So you need to bridge the gap between now and maybe a very long time in the future before you have a crop, because even if you're planting a lot of crops, again, a number of things could go wrong and you could lose all of them for that year. How do you prepare? What do you do? Well, I want to show you here. I've got this is like a brick of black beans. I bought these beans at Walmart, and I have a food saver, and you can shrink those. It'll suck all the air out and put it in this airtight pack. And again, there's numerous places you can go to learn about how to do that. Look up videos on YouTube and Rumble, and you'll find all sorts of people that will walk you through that process of how to do that properly. But that brick of beans will last 20 to 30 years being stored properly. Now, I had a clear see-through package for that. I prefer to do that because I like to see what's in there visually. But you have to make sure you protect that stuff from light. So we have a plastic tub that no light can enter that I put those into. You have to make sure that the temperature remains within a certain range. There's a number of things you have to do. You have to make sure that, mice don't get into your food supply. But set that stuff up and diversify. Keep some at your friend's house. Keep some at your relative's house. And that way, again, if there is a flood or a fire or a break-in or any of those things, and you need food, there's food available. So build out a deep pantry. You can get cans of numerous things that'll last 3 years. Just rotate those in and out. Buy things that you normally eat and just have a deep pantry and make sure you rotate out by date. And so eat the stuff today that you bought 2 or 3 years ago and then go out to the store and replace it. And then as time goes by, you build out this deep pantry. You can do this a little bit at a time, even if you don't have a lot of money. Just buy 2 or 3 extra cans every time you go to the grocery store and start building that out. We talked about this some time ago, so hopefully you've been doing that already. But that's one way you can make sure to ensure your food and water. Food and water are very important. I mean, air's the only thing probably more important than food and water. So again, make sure you have that water source. I would get some sort of water filter for that water source because you don't know what scenario we may be talking about. The local water might be contaminated, as we've seen with certain events happening recently. So make sure that you have a way to filter that water. Make sure you have food. What are some other things? Well, I mean, I've got this here. This little pouch has an emergency sleeping bag in it. And it's waterproof and it reflects back your body heat. It was like $8 on the internet. So I bought a bunch of these things and just stuck them in a drawer because you never know what will happen. And what have we seen happen in the past few years? You don't have to have a major crisis to maybe make use of those. So if you don't have a wood-burning fireplace in your home, we saw in Texas a couple of years ago where they lost their utilities, their energy. There were people that had to go out and sit in their car in the middle of winter and turn the heat on to stay warm. But if you've got a sleeping bag like this, you're in good shape. Here in Virginia, last January, so 2022, on I-95, they had this snowstorm sort of come out of nowhere and left a bunch of people stranded on the side of the road. And there were all these people, uploading videos to social media as they sat in their cars saying, somebody needs to do something. We're freezing out here. We're starving. And I would think, okay, well, get out and walk. Most of you could probably do that. Along that stretch of interstate, every mile or so, there's an exit with numerous restaurants and hotels. So that's one option is you use your brain, the wisdom God gave you, and hey, maybe get out of that car. And most people just sat there for 24 hours waiting for the traffic to move. I would have gotten out the car and walked. But if you have a bag that you keep in your car that has things like those emergency sleeping bags, because people in the past, they've been driving maybe on less trafficked roads than that, got stuck in the snow and been there for a week. You want to have some emergency supplies like that just in a bag, stick it in your trunk, leave it there. Hopefully you never need it, but if you do, it's there. So that's one thing you could have. Also, the same company, I think it's Serious Survival. I mean, there's a bunch of good companies like this that do this stuff. This right here, this is a lighter that's charged by a USB port, and it gives an electrical charge to be able to light something. So where that's beneficial is, if you're in a windy, cold conditions, the wind's blowing heavily and you need to light a fire, well, you don't need a Zippo that's going to send this flame that's just going to blow out. You want something that has like an electrical current that isn't going to be blown out by the wind, or they have butane lighters that are like jets that just shoot out. It's like a blowtorch. Get yourself some lighters like that in the worst conditions you would be able to start a fire if that's what you need to do. So just having tools in general such as that would enable you to do those things. So what are some other things? I've had people talk about gold and silver. And I hear a lot of times, well, you can't eat gold and silver. No doubt, you can't eat gold and silver. You know what, guys? You can't eat dollar bills either. But the same people who say that walk around with lots of dollar bills. They haven't emptied their bank accounts and bought just food with it. Gold and silver are money and have always been money for thousands of years. So gold and silver have been money from the time of Solomon, the time of Jesus, all the way to today. For thousands of years, gold and silver have been a means of exchange, a store of value that can be traded, even in the worst of times, even in the depths of World War II and some of the worst circumstances. There was value to gold and silver, and it could be traded for food or water, whatever essentials you may need. So it's important to have some of that in order to, we all understand that barter is not the most efficient system. So if you have a barter type system, say after a central bank digital currency has been implemented, gold and silver would give you that ability to be able to overcome some of those issues with barter where someone would accept that. Get small denomination silver. So pre-1965 U.S. quarters and dimes have real silver in them. If you have some of that, I hear people all the time say, well, back when I was a kid, you could buy a loaf of bread for a quarter. Well, you can still buy a loaf of bread for a quarter if you've got one of those pre-1965 quarters, because they're made of real silver. And you could actually probably buy a couple of loaves of bread with that quarter today. So make sure you have some of that. You don't have to have a whole lot of it. Just a little bit on the side, some dimes and some quarters that you could trade for a dozen eggs with someone nearby who has a chicken, right? You could be able to trade with that, and you could use those to barter your skills, sell your skills, or barter your skills, whatever you need to do. That's why it's important to have a sense of community and have skills and knowledge and to be making plans like this. So, these are some of the ideas I have. I think I've covered. Let me look at the list and see. I've had some computer issues. The computer's conked out on me a couple of times here, so I don't know that I have much time before it does it again. But guys, the point is, I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow, next week, next month, next year. But I do know this. I know in the end, I'm going to be in heaven. I'm going to be with Jesus, whether I die or the rapture occurs, whatever happens between now and then, I know where I'm going. Do you know that? Do you know that? And that's the most important thing that you can know. And I want to turn to this Bible verse right here, Romans 8, verse 18. It says, "Yet what we suffer now is nothing compared to the glory he will reveal to us later." So guys, I don't know what any of us is going to have to endure between now and when we either die or the rapture occurs. I don't know what that's going to be. Some of us will live easy lives. Some of us will live lives of terrible persecution and torture. I don't know. I don't know what events are going to take place between now and then. But what I do know is this, that whatever suffering we have to endure now, whatever trials or tribulations are thrown at us, it's nothing compared to the glory that awaits if you know Jesus Christ. So that's why that is the most important thing you can do to prepare, is to put your trust in the Lord and know in the end, everything is going to be wonderful. You're going to be in heaven with Jesus. What could be better than that? So, everything else is temporary, guys. All the suffering, all the evil in this world, all the bad news that we talk about, it's just temporary. So guys, my computer has crashed like 3 times while recording this. So I guess this is a message the enemy doesn't want to get out. So I'm going to try to wrap this up real quick before it crashes again. But leave your comments below. What do you think? How should we be preparing? Let us all know. Share with each other. All ideas are welcome. I certainly don't have all the answers, but leave your comments below. Make sure to like and share this. And God willing, I'll see you on Monday. Bye. If you want to learn more about the end times and Bible prophecy, make sure to sign up for my free monthly newsletter and get your copy of my free ebook, 7 Signs of the End Times. Just follow the link in the description to get your free book. Also, make sure to check out all of my books. Just look up Britt on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Apple iBooks, Google Books, Kobo, or anywhere books are sold. Thanks for watching today, and until next time, Keep your eyes fixed on Jesus, the author and perfecter of our faith.